the 42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William J. Clinton, and the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton. Ladies and gentlemen, the 43rd President of the United States, the Honorable George W. Bush and Mrs. Laura Bush. Ladies and gentlemen, the 44th President of the United States, the Honorable Barack H. Obama and Mrs. Michelle Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Justice of the United States, the Honorable John G. Roberts Jr., and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court. Ladies and gentlemen, the children of Vice President-elect Harris and Mr. Douglas Imhoff, Cole Mackin Imhoff, and Ella Rose Imhoff. Ladies and gentlemen, the children of President-elect Biden, Robert Hunter Biden II, and Ashley Blazer Biden, also the grandchildren of the President-elect.
Oh, we got cut off.
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the Vice President, the Secretary of the Senate, the Honorable Julie E. Adams, and Chief Administrative Officer of the House of Representatives, Catherine Spindor.
Chucks, that this is, that they talk about her as being just the mom, the woman in Chucks that they know, and yet they're still kind of weirded out by seeing their dad on television, on CNN, doing interviews. And of course, he is a lawyer and will be entering Georgetown Law School to teach there when they make the move here today to Washington.
Lindsay Davis, they met on a blind date. She Googled him beforehand. But I love the anecdote I was reading just a couple days ago. His first wife went to dinner with the two of them and said, "You made him a better man."
And she says that they have a great relationship. And her friend, by the way, had told her, don't Google him before that blind date. I did want to just point out the fashion, because we saw, obviously, Hillary Clinton coming out in her purple pantsuit. Kamala Harris opting not to follow that fashion trend today. She is wearing a dress designed by Christopher John Rogers and Sergio Hudson. Christopher is a young black designer from Baton Rouge, currently lives in New York City. Sergio is a black designer from South Carolina. And Joe Biden wearing perhaps the most iconic American designer, Ralph Lauren, who had also dressed Hillary Clinton and Melania Trump in 2017. Also, the first second gentleman wearing a Ralph Lauren suit as well. And Dr. Jill Biden is wearing a blue wool tweed coat and dressed by emerging designer Alexandra O'Neill of Markarian, and very intentionally hand embellished by crystals and pearls to subtly reflect the light. I imagine that is meant both literally and figuratively.
He was talking about that yesterday, and there, of course, you see the current Vice President of the United States for another hour or so, Mike Pence and his wife, Karen Pence. John Carl, I think there was never any question, really, whether Mike Pence would show up today. Deep down, he is an institutionalist as well.
No question at all. He was going to be at this inauguration no matter what. He was a Trump loyalist, but he is an institutionalist. He took this role as vice president seriously, and part of the way he saw it was loyalty to the president, but more importantly, loyalty to the Constitution and loyalty to the traditions, American political traditions, and that's why he's here.
Mary Alice Parks, pick up on this as well. We were talking about where he fits in the Republican Party going forward, if at all, how the Republican Party moves beyond Trump.
We were talking about seeing Senator Ted Cruz, and I don't think that Democrats view this impeachment as the only moment of possible repercussions for what happened with that riot. I think that they are dealing with the impeachment, but they have talked a lot about whether there should be serious repercussions for some of those senators that were engaged in perpetuating bogus claims about the election. And George Bush, too, in his statement about the insurrection, he said he was deeply disappointed with political leaders who were, again, just questioning a valid and fair election. So I think that this idea of consequences or of accountability does not stop with the outgoing president, but we're going to see a continued conversation about the future of some of those Republicans who want to continue to have a seat at the table in Congress.
Let me add, if I could. You have people like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, former United States Supreme Court clerks, people who know the law and know the Constitution, who knowingly lied to angry and desperate people who had voted for the president, and they knowingly lied to them. That's what they did. They knew there was no way for Mike Pence to do anything on January 6th, and there needs to be acknowledged that that happened for two reasons. Because they were pursuing their own ambition, and they weren't doing a thing to try to help Donald Trump because they knew they couldn't.
You also had a solid majority of the House Republican caucus vote that way as well. The ceremony, boy, it's just hard as you look at it right now and you see all those masks. I'm going to bring Jen Ashton back on this. What a sign of the times.
Absolutely, George. We have to remember it was just about 9 months ago that we heard the CDC do an about face and say that they're recommending face coverings for all lay people. We've never seen that before, and to see it now in the setting of unprecedented deaths and an out-of-control pandemic and an inauguration is just really historic.
You see double masks there at times as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see that recommendation as well with possibly an N95 on the inner layer and another outer layer. Some aerosol scientists saying that it does offer more protection.
And now,
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Michael R. Pence and Mrs. Karen Pence.
Vice President Pence making his way out. You hear that applause there. He was leaving office as governor of Indiana when Donald Trump chose him to be vice president, resurrected his career at that time. He paid him back with loyalty over 4 years, some would say to a fault, but a final break at the end. Mary Bruce, we're talking about signs of the times, not only masks on the faces of all those people on the steps today, many members of Congress wearing body armor.
George, just astounding, and certainly a sign of the times. Some Democratic members are, we've learned, wearing body armor out here today underneath their coats. In fact, our reporter Ben Siegel spotted some Democrats greeting each other by sort of tapping on their chest, sort of a subtle acknowledgement that they are prepared. Because, of course, it was just 2 weeks ago. It's not just that they witnessed, this horrific violence. They were victims of it. So many who are here today to mark this transfer of power were themselves whisked away off of the Senate or House floor into a secure location. And so many members of Congress, like the rest of the country, are still reeling from this, but in a very personal way. And I have to say, on a very different note, it is just remarkable here. It's always one of my sort of favorite parts of an inauguration is just to watch former presidents and congressional leaders pal around. I have to say, President Bush, as he often does at these things, appears to be having a pretty good time. It's just fun to be able to see all of them interact. The children, the grandchildren. We saw Joe Biden's granddaughters there. He is so incredibly close with them. They talk all day pretty much in one never-ending constant conversation. There they are, along with the youngest Biden there, Hunter Biden's baby son. But it is just such a split screen to think that you have, so many coming together to mark really this next chapter at the same time that so many are still coming to terms and grappling with what we saw here just 2 weeks ago.
That's right, Mary. And I want to bring in Pierre Thomas for more on that, because Pierre, every single day that goes by, we learn how much more horrifying it was inside that Capitol, inside those chambers. Members of Congress could have lost their lives.
Indeed, George. Law enforcement officials saying that members of Congress could have been kidnapped. Some of them could have been killed. I've been on the phone with sources all morning. They're talking about that every stop has been pulled. They are not taking any chances. I'm not surprised that members of Congress are wearing body armor. And George, a couple of the law enforcement officials that I spoke to, including those officers who were in the melee, talked about how while there was a major security breach, they are saying that they believe that they fought to save democracy. They have no doubt that the people that would storm that Capitol were coming in to take hostages and possibly kill people. And one of the officers talked about how many of the people in the crowd were trying to turn them against members of Congress, trying to get them to help them arrest members of Congress. Just extraordinary. But they're watching with a lot of pride today, George, because they believe that they helped keep the unimaginable from happening.
Right. This was not just spontaneous combustion. There were a lot of elements of pre-planning here, Pierre.
Indeed, George, we are getting information that some of those charged had talked about coming to D.C. days earlier before the January 6th certification of Biden's election to do, quote, hunting. Law enforcement officials put out a statement through court documents yesterday that members of these groups were communicating during the actual attack, communicating through Facebook messaging, talking about trapping members of Congress. Just extraordinary, and my sources are saying that the more we learn about this and how challenging the situation was for law enforcement, fist fights throughout the Capitol, George. One of the officers talked about how they were in a hall full of basically smoke and tear gas, and that the crowd was coming down the hall, and there were about 15 officers who fought back over 100 people.
And he said at that point he was dragged out the door and he was stripped of his badge. He was stripped of his, ammunition, and they were yelling, "Kill him with his own gun." Incredible, George.
Alex Rodriguez right there, I believe. Open. Yeah, right. Jennifer Lopez, of course, is going to be singing here at the inaugural. Martha Raddatz, I hope at least, the 25,000 National Guard's troops are going to deter and defend against any attack today. But again, talking about signs of the times, one of the chilling ones, all those National Guard troops had to be screened for an insider threat.
They were all vetted, and in fact, George, some of them have been kicked out. 2 members, they said, because of extremist statements that were found, and about a dozen others because of criminal background or criminal activity not related to extremism. But that has been a problem in the military over the years. They have fought to get white supremacists out and extremists out. I know they're going to double down on that going forward. But 25,000 National Guard members, again, these are citizen soldiers. This is not their full-time job. They can be nurses, they can be hairdressers, they can be anything, and they were all called to duty. I think you just saw Eugene Goodman going by there. They were all called to duty after January 6th. There was a very mild presence of National Guard on January 6th. They didn't want them to be in tactical gear. The mayor of D.C. did not want that look. But now they've got 25,000. And I'll tell you also, George, there are all these ceremonial military there. It's wonderful to look at those bands. There will be many more ceremonies as the day goes on. But there are seen and unseen military officers ready to respond to any kind of threat today.
And there we see Kamala Harris, Doug Emhoff, making their way down the Capitol steps. Byron, you said this means an awful lot to people like your daughters who look like her.
George, that's absolutely right. I mean, there is the power of possibility when you see someone who looks like you. Black or white, we as a nation celebrate first. We see it as progress, not a problem. Certainly some in the shadows of America fear diversity. But this day, these images, George, remind us this time, fear did not win.
Kamala Harris will make history just about an hour from now. As we see, Pete Buttigieg is going to be incoming Secretary of Transportation, along with his husband, Chasten. 2 vice presidents talking there, Dan Quayle and Mike Pence, greeted now by Bill Clinton.
Accompanying the Vice President-elect, the Chief of Inaugural Ceremonies, Maria Miller-Lohmeyer, the Acting Deputy House Sergeant-at-Arms, Kevin Grubb, and the Acting Deputy Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, United States Capitol Police Officer, Private First Class Eugene O. Goodman.
Goodman, Capitol Police officer, under assault 2 weeks ago, now escorting the Vice President-elect.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Devi Harris, and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
You can see it in her eyes. She's smiling.
You can see it. Her eyes are smiling. She got her pearls on as well. You know, her Secret Service code name is Pioneer, and that is just how so many see her. Of course, first woman district attorney in San Francisco, first woman attorney general in California, only the second black woman to become a U.S. senator, and all this, just as a reminder, from a woman who was born at a time when all black women in this country still could not vote. And so certainly this is a real moment. Of course, she just gave a fist bump to former President Barack Obama. And I would imagine if we're talking about the young girls, and I'd like to use Kamala's own words. So she said in the past that they see themselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. And as I imagine, as a result of this moment, that the young women and girls everywhere are going to dream a bit bigger and perhaps expect just a little more.
Hugs there for her stepchildren. David Muir, Doug Emhoff is going to carve out a new role we've never seen before, second gentleman.
And he helped choose what he would be called. Second gentleman was, of course, on the list of possibilities. He's comfortable with that. So we will call him the second gentleman. He's given up his post at a prestigious law firm out west. He will now teach at Georgetown, as Cecilia mentioned earlier in our coverage here. And his children have talked in recent days about how they call their own father their dad, Doug. They said they're so comfortable with him and who he is that they also call him Doug in the household. And they said, our parents have such a relationship, they've been married 6 years or so now, that is so connected, so tight, so close that it weirds us out in so many words. The sort of romance that's still alive, they say, between Doug and the vice president-elect. But they support Kamala, as they call her, and it's a very close relationship, a very modern family. Kamala Harris very close to their mother. And as you mentioned, George, earlier, they've all had dinner together. Kamala Harris telling me when she was running for president that she is all about people knowing that she hears them, she sees them. She repeated that when she was chosen by Joe Biden. And one of the key things as we head into this historic day is not only is she the first woman to be vice president, as Byron said, children, young daughters, and sons all over America are now learning in real time what's possible in America. She says she hopes to play the same role for Joe Biden that he played for Barack Obama, to be the last person in the room, a willingness to be honest with him, to tell her what she believes, but also knowing that ultimately the choice will be his.
Thank you, David. Rachel Scott, one of the fun things about these inaugurations, about these early days of new administrations, is all the new people you meet.
It is, George, and you could see Kamala Harris there taking in this moment, the daughter of Indian and Jamaican immigrants, standing there ready to take the oath in a capital where she once interned, just miles away from Howard University, the historically black college where she graduated, where she joined Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Here on the grounds of the United States Capitol, a symbol of democracy that was built by slaves. This is her moment today as well. And when she was first elected district attorney of San Francisco, the first black woman to do so, she said she walked into her office and it was completely empty except for just one chair in the middle. But George, she was so happy to be able to take her seat.
And now we're seeing the president-elect making his way.
정확하게 만들어야 된다고 생각이 들거든요. 저는 우리가 이렇게 우리의 어떤 자유민주주의를 되찾을 수 있는 우리도 세력이 있어야 돼요. 지금 뭐 이 야당이 국민을 위해서 일해주진 않지 않습니까? 야당하고 지금 여당하고 마치 국민을 괴롭히는 게 삶의 어떤 목적인 것처럼 매일매일 엄청난 말도 안 되는 악법을 지금 쏟아내고 있지 않습니까? 일단은 국민들이 구심점을 가지고 모아야 될 것 같고요. 그리고 그 단결된 힘으로 우리가 좀 힘을 조금 발휘를 해야 될 것 같아요. 저는 이 투통의 어떤 카리스마, 투통의 어떤 지도력, 투통의 어떤 지혜라든가 용기 이런 것들이 참 부러웠어요. 저런 대통령을 가지고 있다는 미국 자체도 부러웠고요. 그리고 그 국민들이 제가 봐가지고 한 50% 정도는 지금 투통을 많이 따르고 있거든요. 그래서 지금 투통한테는 어쩌면 박강원 힘이 계속적으로 주어지는 것 같습니다. 얼마 전에 임기 끝나는 상황인데 임기 며칠밖에 안 남았는 상황인데도 투표를 한번 해봤습니다. 해봤는데 뭐 49%, 51% 이런 식으로 이 지지율이 나오더라고요. 사실 그 레임덕이라는 게 있단 말이에요. 지금 퇴임하기 며칠 전인데 얼마나 레임덕이 크겠습니까? 그런데도 불구하고 지지율이 엄청난 거죠. 자, 그 지지율이 만약에 믿어지지 않는다면 이번에 트위터, 그 페이스북 있잖아요. 거기서 대통령이 그 영구 정지를 당했지 않습니까? 영구 정지당하고 삭제당했을 때요. 세계의 수많은 사람들이 트위터하고 그 페이스북을 탈퇴를 했어요. 지금 SNS에 큰 변동이 일어나고 있는 상황이에요. 여러분들 그 서베이 설문조사를 믿기 힘드시면은 저는 그거를 보면 된다고 생각하거든요. 그 페이스북이라든가 트위터가 주식이 지금 계속 떨어지고 있지 않습니까? 그거는 특통의 그 리더십, 그거를 말해준다고 생각하거든요. 그러니까 특통의 리더십이라고 하는 것은 단지 미국이란 나라에 국한되지 않습니다. 전 세계적인 영향력을 발휘하고 있거든요. 자, 특통의 어떤 그 철학이 뭡니까? 아메리칸 퍼스트입니다. 아메리칸 퍼스트. 그러면 다른 나라 입장에서는 아메리칸 퍼스트 하면 이거를 저 좌파들은 국수주의 그런 식으로 몰고 가면서 그 자신들의 어떤 다문화 정책에 대해서 정당성을 주장하고 있는데요. 그 다문화 정책이라고 하는 거는요, 자신들의 어떤 자기 집의 울타리를 제대로 잘 쳐놓고 도둑이 들지 않게 철저하게 자신의 집을 잘 지키고 그리고 자기의 가족들을 잘 먹여 살리고 굶지 않고 잘 먹여 살리고 난 뒤에 다른 이웃을 도와줄 수 있는 거예요. 자기는 먹을 것도 아무것도 없으면서 어떻게 이웃을 도와줍니까? 그거는 말이 안 되는 거잖아요. 근데 그걸 주장하고 있는 것이 지금 민주당이 그렇게 지금 저는 그렇게 주장하면서, 그러니까 반대를 위한 반대가 아니고 그런 주장을 함으로 인해 가지고 그 세력들을 혁명의 기반으로 지금 삼고 있는 거예요. 혁명을 일으키기 위해서 그들은 마치 다문화 가정이라든가, 물론 그 다문화를 추구하는 이면의 뜻이 뭐냐면은 이 전 세계를 그 단일 정부로 만들기 위한 그런 그림도 있습니다. 그런데 지금 가장 가까운 그 목적은 뭐냐? 혁명의 기반인 거죠. 그래서 저는 아메리칸 퍼스트라는 그 말 굉장히 지지합니다. 저는 코리아 퍼스트라고 생각하거든요. 우리나라도 코리아 퍼스트가 돼야 되는 거예요. 우리나라 지금 조선조 40가지 특혜를 한번 보십시오. 그 40가지 특혜, 대한민국 국민으로 태어나서 자라는 동안 한 번도 누려보지 못한 그러한 혜택이 다 들어있어요. 조선족 40가지 혜택. 왜 이 나라에서 태어나자마자 이때까지 세금을 열심히 내면서 이 나라를 위해서 몸바쳐온 이 내국민들한테 이렇게 차별을 하는 겁니까? 이 정부는? 왜 저 성분도 알 수 없는 저 공산당 나라에서 온 저 조선족들을 왜 이 내국민보다 더 많은 혜택을 줍니까? 한 번도 보지 못한 그런 혜택을 그렇게 내는 겁니까? 말이 안 되는 거죠. 예. 그거는 저는 이 정부가 누구를 위한 정부인지 결코 국민을 위한 정부는 아니라고 생각해요. 그냥 하는 행동 하나하나 보면 다 중국을 위한 정부잖아요. 행동을 하지 않습니까? 다 정책이 중국을 위한 정책이 나오는 거예요. 그냥 국민들은 그냥 개돼지고요. 노예입니다. 노예지. 그래서 저는 특통의 그 철학, 아메리칸 퍼스트라는 거, 자국을 우선시하는 그 태도 굉장히 바람직하다고 저는 생각합니다. 이 미국이라는 사회는요, 이 민주당에 의해서 그 불법 이민자들 있죠? 그런 사람들로 인해 가지고 범죄라든가 범죄에 지금 모든 폭동이라든가 범죄 이런 것의 어떤 원인 제공자가 되고 있거든요. 그래서 이번에 멕시코 장벽을 설치했는 거고요. 그 설치하는 게 수많은 어려움이 있었지만 그래도 스텝 바이 스텝으로 이제 계속적으로 지금 하고 있어요. 저는 너무 웃기는 게 참 어떻게 보면 굉장히 유머가 있는 건데 대통령의 어떤 말 중에서 이런 말이 있어요. 민주당 측에서 멕시코 장벽 그거 콘크리트 장벽 너무 싫어하더라. 너무 싫어해가지고 우리는 강철로 된 장벽을 우리는 설치하고 있다. 이렇게 얘기를 하는 거 너무 유머러스하지 않습니까? 너무 재밌지 않습니까? 콘크리트 벽 싫어해가지고 우리는 돈이 조금 더 들어간다 사실은. 그렇지만 뭐 멋지다. 콘크리트보다가 더 멋지고 돈은 조금 들어가지만 그렇게 우리는 설치했다. 이렇게 얘기를 하는 거예요. 그러니까 한마디로 그 민주당 측한테 두말 못하게 얘기하면서 첫 번째는 그리고 비꼬는 거죠. 제가 그 말을 들었을 때 되게 통쾌했어요. 아 진짜 머리가 좋네. 유머러스 하면서 굉장히 머리가 좋네. 이런 생각이 들더라고요. 자, 오늘 어떤 뉴스가 있는지 살펴보도록 할게요. 자, 어쨌든 여기서 지금 하는 말에 의하면 안 보이시나? 그렇군요. 자, 보이시죠? 자, 거기 보면은 We will see each other again 이란 제일 마지막 표현 있지 않습니까? 여기요. 자, 여기요. We will see each other again. sorry. 자, 이게 바로 우리는 곧 볼 거다 이렇게 표현한 거. 이게 굉장히 의미심장한 말입니다. We will see each other again. 그게 굉장히 의미심장한 말입니다. 아마 트럼프의 퇴임식에서 가장 핵심적인 말이 이 말이라고 저는 생각합니다. We will see each other again. 이 말이 가장 중요한 말이다. 말씀드리고 싶고요.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved. At least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning.
줄리안 어산지 아시죠? 줄리안 어산지. 줄리안 어산지를 지금 시민단체에서 이번에 사면을 시켜달라. 왜냐하면 100명의 어떤 100명을 이제 보통 퇴임식 할 때요. 대통령이 퇴임식 할 때 사면을 많이 시키는 거예요. 사람들은 100명을 지금 사면시키려고 하는데 그 명단에 어산지가 들어있어요. 근데 지금 민주당에서 반대를 하는 겁니다. 보통 퇴임식을 할 때 그 사면을 시켜주면서 돈이 오가는가 봐요. 근데 이번에는 대통령이 돈 받지 않고 그냥 사면을 주고 있고요. 그리고 심지어 그 사면 명단에요. 자신을 넣지도 않았어요. 자신을 어떤 사면 명단에 넣으면은 처벌을 받을 퇴임 후에도요. 처벌을 받지가 않거든요. 그런데도 이 자신이 있는 거죠. 특통은 자신이 있는 거죠. 그러니까 자신을 어떤 그 사면 명단에 넣지를 않았어요. 그 사면 명단에 넣지 않고 이제 100명을 지금 어떤 그 거래 없이 그냥 사면을 해주려고 하는데 지금 뭐라고 하냐? 지금 민주당에서 지금 반대를 하고 있습니다.
The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words.
만약에 당신이 이런 식으로 미치 맥코넬 아시죠? 미치 맥코넬.
The founders did not say to form a perfect union.
미치 맥코넬이 어떤 식으로 이제 편지를 보냈냐 하면요. 제일 마지막에 보시면 보면 We are much more likely to convict you in an impeachment trial. 우리는 당신 여기서 당신 누구겠습니까? 아마 이제 화이트 하우스에 계신 분이니까 아마 그 대통령을 의미하는 거겠죠. 특통을. 우리는 더 많이 당신을 어떻게 탄핵할 거야. 예. 탄핵 더 열심히 할 거야. 이렇게 말하고 있습니다. 어산지 풀어주면 나 너 가만히 안 둬. 나도 너 탄핵 계속 추진할 거야. 다시 바꿔서 그렇게. 왜 그 줄리안 어산지가 왜 이렇게 중요하냐 하면 줄리안 어산지가 수많은 지금 그 게이트에 관련된 거 있잖아요. 뭐 피자 게이트라든가 뭐 오바마 게이트, 바이든 게이트, 수많은 게이트가 지금 풀렸지 않습니까? 그 게이트에 관련해가지고 자기들이 이제 위협을 느끼는 거죠. 그러니까 어산지가 감옥에서 나오면 더 많은 게 이제 폭로가 되지 않겠습니까? 그러니까 풀어주지 마라 이렇게 하는 거예요. 대통령, 너 그렇게 계속 풀어주려고 하면 우리는 너를 어떻게 더 탄핵을 추진할 거다 이렇게 얘기하고 있어요. 여러분, 미치 맥코넬이 누구냐 하면요. 공화당 원내 대표였어요. 그러니까 상원의 원내 대표였습니다. 상원의 원내 대표였는데 선거가 끝나고 어떻게 보면은 가장 먼저 배신을 한 사람이 미치 맥코넬이에요. 어떤 식으로 했냐 하면은 그 선거인 명단이 딱 나왔지 않습니까? 물론 부정선거에 의해서 어떤 그 무결정성이 아니고 엄청나게 결점이 많은 그 선거인단 명단이 나왔습니다. 그랬을 때 미치 맥코넬이 그거를 받아들이자 그리고 공화당 측을 공화당 의원한테 계속 전화를 하면서 설득을 하면서 우리 더 이상 반대하지 말자, 바이든 정부 받아들이자 이런 식으로 설득하고 다닌 사람이 미치 맥코넬이에요. 공화당 사람. 그런데 그 미치 맥코넬이 지금 같이 살고 있는 와이프가 누구냐? 중국 사람입니다. 중국 여자. 나이가 아주 어린 사람이죠. 그 미치 맥코넬에 비해서 굉장히 나이가 어린 사람이에요. 그런데 그 중국 사람이요. 그 중국 본토에 그 공산당하고 아주 뿌리 깊은 커넥션이 있는 그런 집안이에요. 뿌리 깊은 공산당 집안입니다. 그런 집안하고 지금 이제 그런 집안의 어떤 와이프를 지금 둔 사람이 미치 맥코넬입니다. 여러분도 알다시피 페이스북 CEO 아시죠? 그 사람도 지금
national backgrounds, cultures, and styles.
이번 일을 계기로 해서 사람들이 이렇게 말을 하고 있죠. 와이프를 중국 사람을 얻으면 안 돼. 그렇게 말을 많이 하고 있죠. 근데 그 미치 맥코넬이 이렇게 그 공화당 원내 대표이면서 그 사람들을 뭐 1월 6일 날 그 선거인단 그 명부에 대해서 반대하지 말자. 그렇게 그 전에 그렇게 하면서 돌아다녔다는 거죠. 사람을 설득하고 다녔다는 거죠. 근데 이 미치 맥코넬이 대통령한테 줄리안이 어산지 그거 사면하지 마라. 하면은 나는 우리들은 너를 어떻게 더 탄핵을 추진할 거다. 이런 식으로 얘기한 거예요. 자, 그럼에도 불구하고 지금 대통령은 자신을 사면 명단에 넣지 않았어요. 이렇게 막 적들이 계속 사면 그러니까 그 탄핵에 대해서 주장하고 있는 상황 벌써 하원에서 상원 그 사면에 탄핵에 대해서 들어갔지 않습니까? 그럼에도 불구하고 3회 명단에 넣지 않았어요. 그거는 첫 번째는 자신감을 엿볼 수 있는 부분입니다. 얼마나 자신감이 있었으면 자신감이 있었는 사람도 사실 이런 상황이 되면 이렇게 생각할 수 있어요. 아! 그래도 어느 뭐라고 하나 일단은 뭐 3연 명단에 넣어 놓으면은 그래도 좀 안전지대가 확보가 되는 거지 않습니까? 그렇게 할 수 있는데도 불구하고 하지 않고 이렇게 한다는 거 정말 대단한 것 같지 않습니까? 그 신념이 굉장히 강하다는 거, 용기가 있다는 거, 그리고 그만큼 자신이 떳떳하다는 거 너무 놀랍지 않습니까? 참 대단한 것 같아요, 그죠? 근데 우리 박 대통령 아시죠? 박근혜 대통령. 그분도 참 털어서 뭔지 안 나는 분인데 그 털어서 뭔지 안 나는 그분을 가지고 이 나라는 탄핵을 했어요. 참 온갖 조작을 통해서. 없는 데서 무에서 유를 만들어내는 사람들이 바로 저 공산당 정권입니다. 공산당들이에요. 공산당 부역자이고요. 공산당들은 무에서 유를 창조합니다. 거짓이라는 어떤 거짓이라는 산을 그냥 무에서 유를 창조하는 사람들이 바로 사람들이 아니죠. 무에서 유를 창조하는 존재들이 악마들이 바로 공산당이라는 거죠. 너무 고맙습니다. 그만큼 자신이 있고 그리고 자신감이 있고 신념이 있다는 그 부분에 대해서 굉장히 제가 뭐 미국의 역사를 잘 알지는 못하지만 미국 역사에서 가장 뭐 훌륭한 사람 중에 한 사람이 될 것 같아요. 역사적인 인물로. 앞으로 이런 마음이 변하지 않고 이 자유민주주의를 위해서 끝까지 싸워주셨으면 좋겠네요. 무엇보다도 건강하고 무엇보다도 안전하게 건강하고 안전하게 살아 있어야지만 나라를 위할 수가 있는 거거든요. 늘 걱정이 돼요. 워낙 얘들이 호시탐탐 어떤 엄마 왜 이래? 이거를 바로 방송사고로 가는 겁니다. 호시탐탐 어떤 그걸 노리기 때문에 참 그래요. 자, 이건 어떻게 되나 한번 볼까요? 자. 이제 그 포토라인이 있는 거예요. 포토라인. 내 생각. 그러니까 이 사람들이 사진기를 가지고 있는 게 아니고
National anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band. Please welcome Lady Gaga.
Well, you knew that was coming. You knew Lady Gaga had to have some kind of an amazing outfit.
What so proudly we hailed
핸드폰으로 찍는 거 보니까
exuberant. Star Spangled Banner. Who may have ever heard Lady Gaga right there? Now it is time for the Pledge of Allegiance. That will be led by Andrea Hall. She's a firefighter from Fulton County, Georgia.
Welcome from the city of South Fulton, Georgia Fire and Rescue Department, President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
First African woman in that department's history to be named captain.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're union the first to endorse Joe Biden. And of course, Georgia, one of his biggest friends.
그러면서도 보상하면서도 충분히 상황별
What you are all about to be part of America is a historic moment of first. To administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, it is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
좀 차갑게 느껴졌어요. 근데 자꾸 보니까 또 그게 눈 색깔이라고 하는 그게 제가 이때까지 접해왔던 그런 사람들하고 눈 색깔이 많이 달랐어요. 그러니까 뭐 저도 여러 나라 많이 이렇게 여러 나라 사람들 많이 겪었는데 그 멜라니아 여사 같은 눈 색깔은 제가 잘 못 본 것 같아요. 네. 그 눈 색깔이 많이 달랐기 때문에 제가 좀 많이 제일 처음에는 그 눈을 보면서 이 사람이 굉장히 차가운 사람이 아닌가 이런 생각을 했었는데 물론 아직까지도 그 사람이 따뜻한 사람인지 차가운 사람인지는 모르겠습니다. 하지만은 나보다는 대통령을 앞세우려고 하는 사람이고요. 제가 보기에는 나보다는 대통령을 앞세우려고 하는 사람이고 두 번째는 그걸 다시 말하면은 대통령에 대한 어떤 배려가 있는 사람, 내조를 잘하는 사람으로 저는 비쳤습니다. 예. 왜 우리나라 대통령 여러분 잘 아시지 않습니까? 그 같이 비행기에서 내려가지고 이제 오는데 영부인이 자기가 먼저 성큼성큼 오더라고요. 그러니까 리드를 하는 거예요. 리드를. 영부인이 대통령을 리드를 하더라고요. 우리나라에서. 전 세계에 뭐 최소한 우리나라 사람이 지켜보고 있는 상황인데 대통령을 리드를 하고 있어요. 제가 깜짝 놀랐습니다. 예. 그게 한두 번 비춰진 게 아니고 제가 그런 부분은 참 많이 봤거든요. 이건 아닌데 예. 왜냐하면 다른 모임에 가가지고 뭐 리드할 수 있어요. 항상 남편이 부인을 리드하라는 부분 없습니다. 와이프가 허즈번드를 리드할 수도 있는 거예요. 그런데 그 자리는 대통령이 리드하는 자리거든요. 그럼 대통령이 리드하게 가만히 놔둬야 되는 게 First Lady의 어떤 에티켓인 거죠. 매너인 거죠. 예. 이 뉴스는 그런 뉴스였고요. 자, 이거는 뭐냐 하면은 여기 보면은 프레지던트 트럼프 issues exclusive order on cyber security. 그러니까 사이버 있잖아요. 온라인상 거기에 대한 어떤 주의보를 지금 그 명령을 내리셨네요. 지금. 자, 린이 오늘 뭐라고 했냐면 wait on the road, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen Lin heart, wait I say on the road. 자, 이거는 이제 아니요, 이거는 뭐 그 성경 구절이고. 잠깐만요. 어떠시? 오늘 새로운 가만히 있어요. 잠깐만요. 이게 뭐가 왔는가 한번 이게 왔군요. 오늘 뭐가 왔냐 하면요. 첫 번째, 방금 들어온 내용이거든요. 그 브레이킹으로 나온 건데, overnight, 밤새도록 말이에요. President Trump released the Kraken on Obama. 그러니까, 오바마에 관련한 그 크라켄을 풀었다는 거예요, 지금. 그게 뭘까요? 한번 볼까요? 그 크라켄이 우리가 많은 추측을 했지 않습니까? 크라켄이 그 무슨 카드 그걸 의미하는 건가? 이게 전체적인 내용을 들어보면
Approaching now the moment for President Biden to take
지금 오바마에 관련한 많은 서류를 지금 풀고 싶어 했거든요. 트럼프 대통령이. 그런데 그거를 FBI가 계속 반대를 했어요. 반대를 했는데 그래가지고 어느 정도는 약간 양보를 했대요. 참 그때 DNI 보고서 같은 경우에도 CIA가 중국과의 어떤 중국의 개입 관련해가지고 증거를 다 인멸을 했지 않습니까? 인멸. 판멸을 했습니다. evacuated라고 했어요. 스크럽이라고 했어요. 스크럽이란 표현을 했거든요. 스크럽이란 표현은요, 아주 빡빡 긁어 없애는 거, 그걸 말하는 거예요. 빡빡 긁어서. 여러분, 스크럽 많이 들어보셨죠? 빡빡 긁어 없애는 게 스크럽인데, 그 CIA가 빡빡 긁어 없앴어요. 중국 관련해, 중국의 어떤 개입 관련해가지고 그 내용을 다 빡빡 긁어 없애버린 거예요. 그런데 이번에 계속해서 며칠 전부터 계속해서 오바마 계획에 관련해가지고 해제해라,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Constitution of the United States. So help you God. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
Held the chief played for Joe Biden. Joseph Robinette Biden will be the 46th President of the United States. He was congratulated as Mr. President. He will officially become President in about 9.5 minutes at noon, as he's giving the address. So Dr. Joe Biden overcome with emotion in that moment, who wouldn't be? David, near the course of a lifetime for Joe Biden.
George, this was the ultimate long game. He was elected to the Senate at 29, the youngest, will now be sworn in as the oldest president. He has waited and he has dreamed of this moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, please
so
be
many
seated.
years. He has told me the president's job is to heal, the country needs healing, and he told me the words of a president matter.
그런 거에 대해서 경고를 했습니다. 그러니까는 지금 아마 제 생각에 그건 것 같아요. 그 사람을 어린 애들을 상대로 해가지고 성폭행을 하고 그리고 그 고기를 먹고 피를 마시는 그런 거를 관련해서 하는 것 같습니다. 그런데 그거에 관련해가지고 경고를 했다는 거죠. FBI가. 한마디로 못 보게 지금 얼음장을 놓고 있는 상황인데, 자, 그런데 용어 자체가 뭐 참 웃기는 게요. 조 바이든이 아니고요. 조 바마라고 했는 거예요. 조 바마. 그러니까 조 바이든의 뒤에는 오바마가 있다는 걸 사람들이 다 알고 있어요. 그래가지고, 그러니까 조 바이든을 조정하는 게 오바마라는 게 알고 있는 거예요. 그래서 조 바이든이라고 표현하지 않고 조 바마라고 표현하는 거 있는 거죠. 조 바마. 그러니까 약간 시니컬하게, 아주 시니컬, 약간 그 시니컬이라는 게 뭐냐면 냉소적으로, 아주 냉소적으로 지금 그러니까는 바이든을 표현하고 있는 거예요. 조 바마라고. 한마디로 비꼬는 거죠.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day. A day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken. The oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once in a century virus that silently stalks the country has taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it." My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this. Bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make healthcare secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all are created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge. And unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America when we've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand, across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Not ever. those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you place in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. If you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay a bed wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Because here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand. There are other days when we're called to lend a hand. That's how it has to be. This is what we do for one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. And we can still disagree. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested. and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And in my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Remember all those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic. Those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. We'll honor them by becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up? All of us? It's time for boldness, for there is so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with a sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And will give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch but thrived. that America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, and devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
The inaugural address of Joseph Robinette Biden, now 46th President of the United States. Powerful, personal, emotional at times, delivered with command. The new president called Americans to empathy and action. He noted those events of 2 weeks ago, the siege of the Capitol, noted that our democracy is fragile, is precious, but it has prevailed.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
As I said, he called Americans to empathy, saying, we can't harden our hearts, we must open our souls, put ourselves in each other's shoes, as his mother taught him.
Garth Brooks to perform Amazing Grace.
발음을 그거 해버리면은 발음을 해버리면 이제 이 욕이 돼가지고 이제 없어질 수도 있어요. 그래서 제가 했습니다.
Amazing grace, how sweet.
우리 너무 희망 고문하고 있는 건가요? 그렇진 않겠지 설마? 왜냐면 The Best가 아직 오지 않았다. 계속적으로 메시지가 오는데 근데 이게 뭔지 모르겠네요. 이게 뭔지 모르겠어요. 아, 걔네. 이 사람이 미치 맥코넬이에요. 미치 맥코넬. 이거는 뭐지? 여기서 보면은 뭐 모든 사람들을 위해서 이제 그 끝이라고 생각하는 사람들을 위해서 지금 얘기하고 있는데 이거는 그냥 끝이 아니야. 이거는 단지 시작했던 것뿐이야. 그는 he become a thief가 됐어요. 그러니까 이게 되게 중요한 표현인 것 같아요. 그는 지금 도둑이 되었어. 이렇게 표현이 됐어요. 도둑이. 그러니까 범죄의 완성을 한 거예요, 지금. 그 범죄의 완성이 뭐냐 하면은 취임식을 함으로 인해가지고 범죄의 완성이 된 겁니다. 따라서 저런 표현이 나온 것 같아요. 어떻게 나왔습니까? 그러니까 여러분 잘 보셔야 돼요. thief라는 표현이죠. thief. 이건 도둑이거든요. 도둑은요 훔치는 사람을 도둑이라고 해요. 칼 가지고 이렇게 위협하고 이렇게 뭔가 뺏는 이런 사람들은 robber라고 표현합니다. R-O-B-B-E-R. 그러니까는 훔치는. 그러니까는 단순히 훔치는 거하고 그러니까는 물건을 그냥 훔치는 거하고 강도하고는 다른 거 아시죠? 도둑하고 강도가 다른 거 아시잖아요. 그 도둑은 thief이라고 표현하거든요. 근데 그거라고 지금 표현하고 있어요. 그는 뭐가 되었다? 도둑이 되었다. 이렇게 돼 있어요. 자, 그 도둑이 되었다는 표현은 다른 말로 표현하면 이제 범죄자가 된 거야. 왜 그전에는 범죄자라고 표현을 안 했는데 이제는 범죄자라고 표현을 한 거예요. 법리 해석을 하면 아마 이게 범죄의 완성에 해당하는 것 같아요. 그래서 thief이라는 표현이 지금 나온 겁니다. 제가 또 이때까지는 그 힙이란 표현을 제가 못 봤었거든요. 근데 여기 이게 큐아논에서 지금 올린 거예요. 큐아논. 왜냐면 Q라고 되어 있잖아요. 이게 Q. 이 큐아논에서 지금 법리 해석을 한 거예요. 큐아논이 Q 또는 큐아논이라고 지금 알려져 있는 건데 이 이름도 알려지지 않는 큐아논이 많은 정보를 올리고 있습니다. 그래서 지금 사람들이 그 큐아논의 정보에 대해서 그런 거에 대해서 굉장히 신임하고 있는데 누군지도 모르는 거예요. 혹자는 그 JFK 주니어가 아닌가 그렇게 말하는 사람도 있어요. 근데 그 실체를 정확히 아는 사람은 없습니다. 그런데 이 큐아논이 오늘 뭐라고 했습니까? 범죄자가 되었다 표현했습니다. 도둑이 되었다 이런 식으로 표현을 했어요 지금. 이게 이 내용을 지금 큐아논에서 올렸거든요. 이 메시지가 있는 거예요. 우리가 이 메시지를 통해서 지금 우리한테 전달하려고 하는 내용을 우리가 해석을 해야 되는 거거든요. 그 훔쳐진 것 가지고 그 문을 나올 때 당신 그는 뭐가 된다? 도둑이 된다 이렇게 되어 있습니다. 이게 가장 마지막 문장이 지금 그러니까 도둑이 되면 뭐가 됩니까? 도둑을 잡으면 되는 거잖아요. 그거라고 생각하거든요 지금. 이제 도둑이 되었어. 이 정식으로 그는 도둑이 되었어. 이렇게 말을 하고 있어요. 이제까지는 도둑이 아니었거든요. 근데 이제는 도둑이 된 거예요. 도둑. 조금 화면을 크게 하도록 하겠습니다. 어디 갔지? 아 여기 있나? 아 쏘리. 오 마이 갓. 가만히 있어. 이게 왜 제가 이거
Following your conviction means you must be willing to face criticism from those who lack the same courage to do what is right. And they know what is right, but they don't have the courage or the guts or the stamina to take it and to do it. It's called the road less traveled.
저런 비행기 보니까 저게 아마 그냥 단순한 여객기는 아닐 거예요. 저게 아마 전투기일 것 같이 보이는데 와 멋있다. 어떻게 저렇게 나르는 저게 이글이거든요. 이글 그러니까 뭐라고 하나 독수리예요. 독수리인데 저런 영상을 어떻게 찍었지? 지금 밝은 거 보여줬는 게요. 내용이 그 아동 성매매로 인한 그런 인신매매 현장을 덮쳤고 그런 걸 체포하는 과정에서 찍은 것 같습니다.